Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Things are going pretty badly in Westminster for the SNP. The leader there, Flynn, has even gone on bended knee and is begging Labour and Lib Dem voters to switch allegiance and to vote for the SNP. And the reason is that polls show that there is a massive drop-off of support, and come the election probably in autumn next year, it is likely that the SNP would lose a lot of seats at Westminster, and indeed possibly even a complete wipeout. It's not impossible for this to happen. And so Flynn is out there begging for these votes. Now, of course, he wants them to vote for the SNP in general, but he wants them to vote for him in particular, because, ironically, one of the most likely seats to go at the next election will be his own. And he doesn't want that. He's grown used to being on that Westminster gravy train, and he wants to stay there. After all, what else could he do? So we'll take a look at this article. We'll see what's going on with the polls, see why the SNP are reduced to begging for votes, and see what is likely to happen. And hopefully it will be a wipeout, but, fingers crossed. Here's the article. Let's go. So, desperate Stephen Flynn begs unionist voters to back the SNP as the party plummets in the polls. So he's going to the unionists. So the SNP, whose very raison d'etre is to break up the union, and he's actually begging unionist voters to back the SNP. I don't think he understands how this works. But anyway, opposition parties called the Westminster Leaders calls for Scottish Labour and Scottish Lib Dem voters to vote for the SNP, in some seats desperate, amid the nationalists struggling with a number of scandals. Well, of course, yes, you're not going to attract a lot of people because you are seen as a party full of corruption, possible criminality, sexual deviancy with the Jordan Linden episode that's starting to sort of gather a pace and gather momentum. Hamza Yousaf's been dragged into that, and he is still failing to say whether he backs Jordan Linden or the victim for some reason. Very reticent there. There's a lot going on. It's only going to get worse as as each day passes. It grows. It gets worse. They're not able to secure it. Their policies are shown to be dangerous or damaging, and in some cases very, very unpopular. They're desperate for money. Their resources are drying up, and they're near. They're not the little line. If they were lying in a hospital bed, the monitor's still going. It isn't a straight line yet, but God, you won't expect it to last much longer. This party is absolutely on its deathbed, and he is there and reduced to begging, the opposition for votes. That's how sad he is. Anyway, desperate Stephen Flynn has begged unionist voters to instead back the SNP in the upcoming Westminster election as his party plummets in the polls. Recent polling has not made pretty reading for the nationalists, who are predicted to lose almost half their MPs amid the turmoil which has engulfed them. A Redfield and Wilton survey found that 35% of voters backed the SNP, with Labour only 3 points behind and the Tories further back on 18%. The result would see the SNP on 25 seats, which is 23 fewer than they won in 2019, and with Labour on 22. The Tories were 7 and the Lib Dems were 5. So they've effectively halved the number of seats they have, but it wouldn't take much more of a swing. And those seats, because the ones that they've saved, the majorities will be massively reduced, but it wouldn't then take much of a swing to lose even more. And with each passing day, with each passing scandal coming out, with the next bit of news, that support is whittling down. Whittle, whittle, whittle. One goes here, one goes there, 3 go the next day. It is like that. And each one is the lifeblood of the SNP, leaking from its body. And that is why it is in desperate trouble. I mean, it's still a lot of votes at 35%. But to lose over half your MPs would be absolutely embarrassing, humiliating. And it would mean that Hamza Yousaf would really have to go if he had done that to the party and lost half their seats. There is no way he could survive that. And that's assuming he actually survives until the next election. The ongoing police probe into the nationalists has damaged their core vote in Scotland, as has the lacklustre leadership of Hamza Yousaf, who most Scots find to be incompetent. That's because they have looked at his record and they've just seen years of stupidity, incompetence, inability to get on and do any kind of job with any kind of ability. And of course, he has no leadership of his party. He cannot control the members. He cannot control what they say and do. He has no power. He's no legitimacy as leader. He's riven, a split through that party, a massive one, and it'll never recover from it. Not while he's leader. In a bid to counter this, the Westminster leader, Mr. Flynn, has claimed that Labour and Lib Dem voters should instead back the SNP to block the Tories to avoid wasted votes. The Tories aren't going to win in Scotland. The Labour Party will win in Scotland. That's who his enemy is. Don't be saying that the Tories are your enemy. You're not in a race with the Tories in Scotland. You've got 35. You've got twice the vote, twice the percentage of the vote than the Tories. And with the first past the post, the Tories are no menace, Let's be honest, your problem is Labour, and you've got to take the votes from Labour, which is why you're doing it. But it isn't the Tories. Don't be telling tales out of school here, matey. Scottish Deputy Labour leader Jackie Baillie has called the plea a desperate ploy. It is. It's a sorry, sad little act from a sorry, sad little man who will soon be out of a job. And she says it's a desperate ploy amid a turbulent few weeks for the SNP, while the Scottish Lib Dem leader Christine Jardine also said that the comment smacks of desperation. And he is desperate. He is absolutely desperate. This is a man who really, really wants to be an MP because there's nothing else he can do. Mr. Flynn pointed to the fact that the SNP is only marginally behind the Tories in 6 seats in Scotland, including Douglas Ross's Moray constituency and Alistair Jack in Dumfries and Galloway. However, the Nationalists are set to lose a number of seats in the Central Belt and face a near wipeout in Glasgow if polling is believed, and that would be the killer for them. To lose Glasgow would be immense, and especially Govan. I think, given how bad Govan is, it would be. That would be the ultimate humiliation for Nicola Sturgeon, for Govan to fall to Labour. That would being her seat. That would be the one that would be rankling the most as she went out. I mean, she's on a sugary peg as she is, and I don't think she's standing at the next election. I think she's standing and she's remaining as an MSP until the next election. I think she resigns then. But it won't be an SNP victory there, I suspect. Mr. Flynn said, voting SNP is the only way to beat the Tories in Scotland at the next election. Is he a moron? Oh, wait. Yes, he is. He's got twice the votes, 35 to 18. First past the post, no chance of the Tories getting that level of power. It's Labour who are 3% behind. It's Labour who are snapping at the heels of the SNP. The Tories have got no chance. They'll pick up a few seats, but across the whole of Scotland, it's meaningless. But, the man doesn't understand this, or at least if he does understand it, he doesn't act properly upon the information, because he's an idiot. The SNP is the main competitor in every Tory-held seat and the incumbent in every target seat, so a vote for Labour Party or the Lib Dems is a wasted vote that risks letting the Tory in the back door, just like it did last time. Rubbish. In 2019, the SNP halved the number of Tory seats in Scotland, and at this election we can finish the job, but only if enough Labour and Liberal Democrat supporters lend the SNP their vote. If Labour and Lib Dem voters wanted independence, they'd be SNP voters. The very fact that they're not SNP voters means that they're actual unionists. They don't want to break up the union. And what you're asking is people who are unionists to vote for a party that wants to break up the union. It isn't going to happen, matey. By voting SNP, we can lock the Tories out of Scotland at this election and rid ourselves of Westminster Tory governments for good with independence. Neither of those things will happen. Miss Baillie, however, said, as they watch their own vote share collapse, it is no surprise that the SNP has turned to such a desperate ploy. This is a move from a party that is mired in scandal, out of touch with Scotland, and scared for the next general election. Only Labour can boot the Tories out across the entire UK and deliver the change that people in Scotland need. And I think Jackie Baillie's right. I mean, the Tories have got no chance of taking Scotland. They've got very little support. I mean, there's an awful, don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of Tory supporters in Scotland in pure numbers terms, but they're so thinly spread that there's not many seats that they win. And so it is, of course, the Labour Party that are likely to pick these up. Anyway, Scottish Liberal Dem MP Christine Jardine also said the comment smacks of desperation. She added, a vote for the Liberal Democrat means getting politicians who put issues that matter front and centre of the agenda. Well, again, people don't really vote Lib Dems because, I mean, if anything, they're further to the left than Labour. And they come up with mad policies. I always class the Lib Dems as being out there with the Greens. And they're neither one thing nor the other. Put it that way. Like Sir Arthur Bossum, as I seem to remember Churchill when being introduced to Arthur Bossum said, Bossum, it's neither one thing nor the other. Don't you love Winston Churchill? Craig Hoy, Scottish Tory chairman, said the SNP have cottoned on to what Scotland's voters already know, that the Scottish Conservatives are the only credible threat to the Nationalists in a large number of seats up and down Scotland. I think Craig Hoy needs to look again at the polls. Third. You're not the credible threat. It's Labour's the credible threat. Only we can keep them out in numerous Westminster constituencies. Not Labour, not the Lib Dems. The SNP recognise that fact and are fearful of it. And that's why they've made this desperate plea to pro-union voters. Now, he is right. It is a desperate plea. But Hoy, just look at the numbers, You got 18%. You're not going to be winning a great number of seats. You'll get a few, but you're not going to be forming the next, well, you won't. I doubt the Tory party across the whole of Britain will be forming the next government. It's time for a change. You've had a long enough shot. You've effectively been in power since 2005, and all right. Some of it was okay, but some of it's been pretty bad. And of late, it's been an absolute bloody nightmare. So yeah, maybe time for a change. But it won't work because those voters are sick and tired of the SNP ignoring the public's real priorities, like the cost of living crisis and the unacceptable NHS waiting times. And that, to be fair, it's not great in England. So, I know that the Scottish NHS is like the worst of the four, but don't be thinking that the NHS in England is a shining beacon. It isn't. I about a year ago now spent a few days in a hospital, and it was the worst sort of week of my life ever. And in so bad as my wife had to take me out of the hospital, literally for my own mental health. The NHS in England is falling apart. Don't be sitting there like some high and mighty arsehole saying, oh, well, yeah, Scottish NHS is terrible, none like the English one. Because the English one is just as bad, so don't come to cod with that one. And again, that's down to the Tories. The Scottish one is down to the SNP, separately run, devolved matter. But anyway, yeah, he is desperate. He's desperate to stay in Parliament because what else can that man do? What skills has he got? It's not as though he's going to go back and start a new life as a new something else. All he knows is the life political. And let's hope he has to go and find a new job by the autumn of next year. Anyway, I shall round off. Come up. Jackie Bailey's right, though. It is a desperate ploy by desperate people who know the game is up. They know they've been found out. And they know that people are rejecting them. And I think some of them also know that there is far more to come out. And it is going to be very, very unpalatable. And I just can't wait to see it. But I would love to see Stephen Flynn lose his job. I'd like to see old Tubby lose his job. Blackford needs to go as well. That'd be cracking. Obviously, it's a shame that Sturgeon's resigning because I'd like to see her lose her seat. But at the very least, if Labour can take that seat in government from her old seat, that would be a parting humiliation for her. She will have overseen the absolute destruction of the party. And then Humza Yousaf, he also is likely. No, he's not. He obviously is MSP, but at the next MSP vote, possibly late 24, early 25 is probably the earliest it'll ever happen. That's assuming they can sort of drag on that long. But he is also one that would lose his constituency if the polls are to be believed. Now, obviously, he'll get back onto the national, the national list and get one of the place votes. But to actually lose his constituency has never happened, I think, to a leader before. Although he really ought to run back home to Dundee and stand there. Although I think he'd be given short shrift now if he did. But, that's how it is. This is how desperate the party is. It can see what's coming. It knows it is done unless it turns this ship around. And it is unlikely to do so, especially with its current leader, a man who cannot unite the party. So, yeah, desperate times, desperate measures. Well done, Stephen Flynn, for acknowledging it. And I shall stop. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. But mostly, leave the like. That's the big one that helps get the ratings. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, don't give your vote away unnecessarily, and goodbye.